처음 영상이 시작되면 화면에는 아무런 메뉴가 나오지 않습니다. 이때 영상 화면에 마우스를 대면 아래에 메뉴가 나옵니다. 만약 화면에 마우스 클릭을 하게 되면 영상은 멈추기 때문에 마우스 커서만 대셔야 합니다. 그 다음에 자막 메뉴를 클릭하시면 화면 중앙에 영어로 된 자막이 나타납니다. 이 상태에서 자막을 선택하기 위해 설정을 클릭합니다. 설정을 클릭하면 자막을 선택하는 메뉴가 나옵니다. 여기서 자막을 클릭합니다. 그리고 자동 번역을 클릭합니다. 그러면 다양한 언어가 나오는데 여기서 한국어를 선택합니다. 한국어를 선택하면 화면에서 보듯이 한국어 자막이 시작됩니다.
I'm Peter Drucker. Executives do a great many things other than making decisions. Indeed, the truly effective executive doesn't make a great many decisions. The fellow who shoots decisions out of a machine gun all the time hits a lot of targets, but very rarely does he hit the right one. But nobody else in business makes decisions except the executive, and it's clearly the most difficult and the most important activity he has to do. A decision in the last analysis is always a judgment, and I don't know how one learns judgment, and I sure don't know how to teach it. But one can learn how to organize the steps in decision making. One can learn what the main mistakes and pitfalls are. One can learn how to give one's judgment a chance to make a decision right and to make it effective. We are going to show you a pretty typical situation, an important decision in the life of a business, but not the kind of a decision you need 50 computers and 5,000 management scientists for. The kind of a decision every one of you has to make in the course of a year, and how to make it.
I know you haven't had a chance to go over the inventory list I sent you. We've got 6 of those semi-trailers, you know. Most of our product goes to operations within 500 miles of the plant. I like the feeling of independence, of having my own equipment. The shippers want to strike, let them strike. If they keep raising the rates every year, let them. Independence. That's something I've always valued.
I know you do, Ted, and so do I. That's why it makes sense for me to buy you out if you really want to sell. You know, as we grow, more and more I'd like to be our own supplier of the principal things we need. It's not only independence, it's keeping the profits in the family. Sit down.
Ev, about keeping things in the family, something I'd like to bring up now. I didn't put it in my letter to you because, well, I'd like to keep this as a personal understanding between us. It's about my son, Teddy. You know, he's been running things since I had that heart trouble last year.
Yeah, I know.
And he's been doing a damn fine job. Now, Ev, if you and I are going to make a deal that makes sense for both of us, I only ask that Teddy be kept on in his present capacity. Do you have any objection to that?
No, I wouldn't think so. I've always thought Teddy was a first-rate boy, and if he's doing a good job, it'd be kind of foolish to go to strangers, wouldn't it?
Yeah, he's a good boy, all right. I'd have been lost without him. You know, Ed, when the doctors told me that I was going to have to quit, Teddy stepped right in and took over without a hitch.
Good.
I hate to admit it, but you know that business went up 11% last year?
You don't say. No.
And I've always been one of those guys that just knew he was indispensable.
Yeah. Well, you have a boy to be proud of for compensation.
Thank you.
I'm proud of mine, too. But when my time comes, Oh, well, hell, don't let's be morbid, huh? We're here to talk business. Now. Yes. Oh. Well, send him in as soon as he gets here, huh? I spoke to you of Peter Drucker. He just phoned from the airport to say he's on his way in. He's going over the whole operation. And I thought it might be a good idea to have him in right from the beginning on this project, if it's all right with you.
Oh, sure.
He keeps telling me that I'm not getting my money's worth from him, so I suppose I should use him to the fullest while he's here, if it's okay.
Oh, fine. Fine.
I haven't come to any firm decision yet. We're still talking price and the scheduled payments. I didn't give any answers, but I did leave him with the impression that I was favorably disposed to the deal.
But you could still get out of it, couldn't you? If you found it might be a mistake?
Oh, yes. As I say, I haven't made up my mind yet, but after looking at the facts very carefully, I don't see how it could be anything but an advantage.
Mind giving me your reasons?
Not at all. First, we're the largest single customer of T.D. Johnson. Now, by purchasing the company, we'd have a stable and constant supply. Second, the company is a moneymaker in a money-making field, and we could improve net profits. Third, although young Johnson seems to be doing a very good job, I think that my management team could improve net profits too. Fourth, acquisition means growth, and this is an organically connected acquisition. And five, the price we're talking is right. Now, do you want any more?
No, these are all perfectly plausible reasons. But what arguments might there be against the deal? What reasons are there why this might not be a good idea?
Well, I don't know of any. I'd thought of sleeping on it for a day or two. And then if I decided to go through with it, why, I'd announce the decision to the boys and get the lawyers to work.
Look, you pay me a lot of money for my advice and for consulting with you on your major business moves. May I suggest you pass on this information you just gave me to your men and have them come in here for an open meeting and let them have their say before you make a decision. Listen to their opinions.
I don't want opinions. I want facts.
Yeah, we all want facts, but it's opinions that give meaning to facts.
All right, Peter. As you say, I'm paying you for your advice, and I'd be a fool not to consider it. But personally, I think the boys would be delighted if I bought this company. It'd give Charlie Fisher more product to sell. It'd give production complete authority over matrices, and it'd give Crowley another company to handle as controller. I don't see where they'd have any objection to it.
Object? Of course I object, don't you?
No, I certainly don't. And neither does production. Oh, Carl just phoned from Cincinnati. When I told him what's going on, he just about flipped for joy.
What the hell is he so joyous about? If Johnson and Company had lived up to our specs, our production manager wouldn't have to be out in Cincinnati.
Don't you see, Charlie? If we take them over, we'll be in a position to make sure they do send us the right stuff. Now, we have no control over it now. Once we have control, we'll be able to go down there and make sure of quality ourselves. Now, what do you think, Crow?
Well, having no experience with them, all I can do is go on the arithmetic of the deal. And so far, that makes pretty good sense. The books show a profit. I haven't analyzed it yet, but it seems to me when you have the opportunity to buy one of your main sources of supply at the right price, why, first answers tend to look positive.
Listen, there's only one reason why they're our main source of supply, and it ain't because their work is so brilliant. We've got a tight contract with Johnson for one reason only, and said reason being that old man Johnson and Lansing were college fraternity brothers, golfing buddies. Oh, and their wives went to school together, too. Did you know that?
Well, you're just proving my point. Look, all I want is to control what they send us. Now, we have a contract with them now for all the wrong reasons. Well, let's take them over and make them deliver the right product for the right reasons.
Bill, you've got 3 kids, right? You own a cow? No, you do not. You have your milk delivered to the door in containers and bottles. Well, if you don't like the milk, you look for a better milkman. Now, I see no reason for buying a cow when all we need is a better milkman.
There are financial considerations that make your analogy pretty cockeyed.
Oh, come on. Now, it's not that cockeyed. You think it's a great idea because you're a financial man and you know that it's going to raise the net profits of the company. Bill here wants a stable source of supply, so he says, let's buy it and we'll control the output. Well, I think you're both wrong. What do you suppose would happen if the old man ever sold this company? Well, we wouldn't stay with Johnson for 5 minutes. And I submit to you that every single one of their customers would slip away to Monsanto and Dow. Oh, come on now. We only take 10% of the product. I'm going to have to peddle the rest.
Well, what are we going to tell the boss?
I have to go into it before the meeting tomorrow. All I can say right now is that the figures make sense.
Well, that's what I've got to say. If sales is your problem, Charlie, you're going to have to handle that your way.
That's just what I'm going to do. I'm going to start by going on the record with one big no.
You're not going to say all this when the boss has already made up his mind, are you?
That's what he pays me for.
All the books on decision-making start out by saying, get the facts. Effective executives who make effective decisions don't start out that way. They start out with opinion. They have learned first that everybody over 21 knows how to find the facts that prove his foregone conclusion. In fact, I think this is the one proven law of statistics. Tell me what facts you need and I'll tell you where to find them. And then they also know that people who have been working in a field for 20 years have opinions and should have opinions. Only a moron wouldn't have opinions. Effective decision makers know that the worst decision is the right decision on the wrong problem. That one can never correct. The wrong decision on the right problem, one can usually bail it out. And so one's got to make sure one understands what the decision is all about. If you have only one case, then you are arguing in favor of your own prejudices. If you have no case against, you have no case for. And unless you make darn sure you get the other side and think through why this should not be the right decision, you don't understand it. Usually, the first decision is nothing but the kind of instinctive response to something that bothers us. What it is, we've got to find out. And that you can only do if you get opinion, and above all, if you get conflicting opinions. Then you have a chance to understand what it is you are trying to decide.
All right, gentlemen. You've had all the figures. You've had several days to think it over, and I'm sure you know why I'm in favor of buying this company. Ted Johnson, Jr. here is ready to answer any questions you might have.
Well, the first thing that I'd like to ask is what we do about a new sales effort. I mean, you're not selling to the big new buyers, the aerospace people whom you don't even call on now.
Why quarrel with success? If you read the figures, you know that sales are up 11% this year over last. My men know the field, they know the product, and they've got the results to prove it.
And you're satisfied with sticking to the same old customers that your dad started with 30 years ago?
The figures show that my men are doing an outstanding job.
Well, it's true that your sales are up, but I did a check on the industry as a group. Epoxy molding companies as a group have reported a sales increase of 19% this year. Now, I'm all for acquisitions, especially in connected fields, but it seems to me that we would only be making a 4.5% on our investment, using your current net in proportion to the purchase price.
Well, we're a growth company. The current net is not the figure we ought to be looking at. Take a look at the projection for next year and the year after. If we continue to build the way we've been going, and there's no reason why we shouldn't do that well or better, why, you'd be up to 9.5% in 3 years.
I'd like to go back for a second. Are you saying that the sales of T.D. Johnson were 8% below the industry average?
The growth of sales, sir.
Are you aware of that fact?
Well, I can't say that I am. I've been too busy to worry about my competitors. Well, you've got to remember that my father got sick and I took over with very little preparation. I was just an assistant production manager. I think a rise of 11% is pretty respectable considering the circumstances.
If the growth curve could be raised to the industry level and expenses remain constant, then I think the investment would begin to make sense.
I noticed in going over your statements that there's no figure listed for the expense of dealing with returns. Now, I know that I am just a salesman and that I may be a little out of line in going into the financial area, but Nevertheless, I would think it must be a substantial enough figure to be included in your statement.
It's just not that substantial. I mean, we don't list a figure for toothpicks in the commissary either.
Well, it's no secret that we had to send back very substantial amounts of our last order because the tolerances were off. If you had the same percentage of returns from your other customers, I think that it would run into a lot more than toothpicks.
Just what would you say the percentage of returns was?
Well, I'd say between 6 and 8 on every shipment. That's what held up those orders on the mini transformers.
Why wasn't I told about this?
Well, it was a footnote in the progress report last month. Well, the boys in the plant worked overtime, straightened it all out.
Look, I'm not saying that we don't have returns. Of course we do. But we're working very hard to get the bugs out of the new dyes, and little by little, and we're doing better every day.
But those figures should have been in the statement.
Well, sir, we haven't finished averaging them out. Our accountants are not quite sure how they should present these new figures.
Well, I think Lansing and his men have begun to realize that the facts don't really quite mean what they thought they meant. But more important still, they are beginning to get understanding. They're beginning to see that they have two problems, and that the attempt to solve two problems with one decision isn't likely to work. They have the problem that they need much better control over their supplies, and especially over such critical supplies as these matrices. And they have the problem of growth. Perhaps the first one requires their building, a machine shop of their own, perhaps, in which they make their own critical supplies. But that would cost a great deal less money than buying this company, and it would be something very different from an acquisition. And as for growth, well, maybe they should look for a business that gets them into a new technology, a new industry, a new market, and yet multiplies their own resources and their own management talents. But I don't think we have to worry about them anymore. From here on out, they'll work it out themselves. Let's look at our decisions and let's ask the question, what can we learn for the decisions we have to make as executives? Why do we need opinions and dissent when it is so much more pleasant to have the facts and shoot for consensus? Well, we need dissent first because everybody is a special pleader. Everybody knows how to find the facts that prove the opinion, the judgment, the conclusion he has already reached. We need dissenting opinions because we need alternatives. In fact, a decision to which there is no alternative is always a bad decision. And one alternative one ought always to look at is to do nothing. It's no accident that a good lawyer starts out by writing the brief for the opposing counsel. He wants to see first what the other fellow's case is. And it's no accident that good decision makers spend a good deal of time on thinking through alternatives. And finally, if you really want a creative solution, one that converts a problem into an opportunity, you need dissenting opinions. They enable you to understand what the decision is all about. Something else I think we might have learned from our little play. Don't start out by worrying about who is right. Think through what is right. I have never seen a decision go into effect where you don't have to make compromises with reality, with all kinds of things, and of course with people. But precisely because of that, one doesn't start out with all the things one cannot do. One starts out and thinks through what is right, and then one has a chance to know what the right compromise is. You know, there's all the difference in the world between saying half a loaf is stillbred, and half a baby is still a baby. Both are compromises. But the first one is a productive one, and half a baby is a dead baby. And one has to know, therefore, what the right solution is, so that one has a chance of making the right compromise. But perhaps the most important thing we can learn, I was taught, some 20 years ago. I sat in on a management meeting of General Motors when old man Sloan was still in the chair, even though he was well past 70. And somebody brought in a recommendation which impressed everybody tremendously. And this usually very controversial committee with a lot of debate and discussion was unanimously for it, including the old man. And so he went around the table and said, do you see anything wrong with this? And everybody said, no, Mr. Sloan. And then the old man said, well, I don't see anything wrong with it either. And therefore, gentlemen, I propose that we postpone this for a month to give ourselves a chance to think. And it was turned down a month later. A decision is not a popularity contest, and good decisions aren't being made by acclamation. They are being made by understanding. And for this you need opinion, you need dissent, and you need to give yourself a chance to think.